Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
When I was a kid, I spent most family gatherings in the kitchen. While my cousins played video games or watched TV, I helped my grandmother make traditional dishes or tried my own recipes. Everyone said I had a gift and should do something with it. After high school, I enrolled in culinary school. Those 2 years were tough. I worked part-time at a restaurant washing dishes to pay for ingredients and supplies. My hands were constantly cut up from knife practice, and I barely slept between classes and work. But I had a dream of opening my own food stall. Not some fancy restaurant, just a small place where I could serve good, honest food to regular people. During school, I spent every free moment developing my menu. I tested recipes on my roommates until they begged me to stop. I saved every penny I could, living on instant noodles and whatever leftovers I could bring home from work. After graduation, it took me another year to get all the permits, find the right location, and save enough for equipment and supplies. The spot I found was perfect. A busy street corner near some office buildings and a college campus. Good foot traffic, reasonable rent, and the landlord was willing to work with a new business owner. I spent weeks getting everything set up just right. The menu was simple but solid: 3 types of rice bowls, some grilled items, and a few sides. Everything made fresh, nothing fancy but really good. Opening day finally came. I was nervous but excited. The first few customers were office workers grabbing lunch, and they seemed to really enjoy the food. A couple even said they'd be back tomorrow. I was starting to feel like maybe this crazy dream might actually work. Then 3 days into my first week, my cousin showed up with his girlfriend and my aunt. I hadn't seen them in months, not since my graduation party where they barely acknowledged what I was doing. My cousin greeted me and said how professional I looked now. I thanked him for coming and asked what they wanted to order. My aunt got excited and said they wanted to try everything. She ordered 1 of each rice bowl, 2 orders of grilled chicken, some spring rolls, and asked about the skewers on display. I explained those were beef sauté and asked how many they wanted. My cousin's girlfriend said to just give them a bunch because they were really hungry. I started preparing their order, feeling pretty good. This was a big order, and having family come support me felt amazing. Maybe I've been wrong about them not caring about my business. The order came to about $60, which was huge for me at that point. Most customers were spending $10 to $15 max. I was already thinking about how this would help cover my expenses for the day. When I handed them the receipt, the reaction was not what I expected. My cousin looked at the receipt and asked what it was. I told him it was their total $62.50. All 3 of them just stared at me for a second, then started laughing. Not like a little chuckle, but actual belly laughs, like I just told the funniest joke they'd ever heard. My cousin asked if I was joking and said I couldn't be charging them because we were family. My aunt chimed in asking if I was serious, reminding me about all the times they'd had me over for dinner. I explained that this was my job now, and this was how I paid rent and bought ingredients. I told them I couldn't just give away food or I'd go out of business. My cousin's girlfriend said that was pretty cold, especially since they came there to support me. My aunt said she guessed success had gone to my head already and that she thought we were closer than that. She talked about family helping family. The whole interaction made me feel terrible. Other customers were starting to stare, but I stood my ground and told them I appreciated them coming, but I needed to charge everyone the same because that's how businesses work. They eventually paid, but they made sure everyone around could hear their complaints about how expensive everything was and how I'd changed. My aunt made a big show of counting out exact change. They left without even trying most of the food. The rest of that day was ruined. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should have given them a discount or something. But then I thought about my rent, my ingredient costs, and how hard I'd worked to get here. 2 days later, I was checking my online reviews like I did every morning, hoping for feedback from customers. That's when I saw it, a 1-star review that made my stomach drop. The review said the food was overpriced and the service was incredibly rude. It claimed the owner had a terrible attitude and acted like they were doing customers a favor by serving them. It told people to save their money and go somewhere else. I clicked on the account that left the review. It was my cousin's email address. The same cousin who had laughed at paying for his food just 2 days earlier. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling angry and hurt. This review could really damage my business. People read these things, and one bad review early on could kill momentum before I even got started. But then something clicked. This whole situation had actually taught me something valuable about boundaries. Some people will try to take advantage of you just because you're related, and they'll get nasty when you don't let them. The next week, my cousin's sister called to say she wanted to bring some friends by for lunch. She mentioned they'd heard great things about my place and asked if she could get a family discount. I told her the prices were the same for everyone, but said I was looking forward to seeing her. She showed up with 5 friends, clearly expecting some kind of deal. When I handed her the full bill, she got that same shocked expression my cousin had. She tried to convince me not to be like that, saying they were promoting my business to their friends. I thanked her for that, but told her the total was $43. She paid, but I could tell she was annoyed. That's when I noticed her pulling out her phone and typing something. Probably another fake review, I thought. But you know what? I didn't care anymore. My food was good, my prices were fair, and my real customers kept coming back. Word of mouth from people who actually enjoyed their meals was bringing in new customers every day. A month later, my aunt showed up again, this time alone. She said she wanted to apologize for how they had acted and asked if we could start over. I told her of course we could and asked what she'd like to order. She said she just wanted a rice bowl and made it clear she was paying full price. She actually became a regular customer after that, though she never brought up the discount thing again. But my cousin left 2 more fake reviews over the next few months, each one more ridiculous than the last. Those fake reviews actually helped me in a weird way. Other customers started leaving real reviews to counter them, talking about how good the food was and how friendly the service was. My rating went up, not down. Now when relatives call and say they want to swing by for a bite, I just smile and tell them I'm looking forward to seeing them. Full price, of course. I started working at this mid-sized accounting firm right out of college, fresh-faced and eager to prove myself. Back then I was just grateful to have a job with benefits and a steady paycheck. The company seemed stable, my co-workers were decent enough, and I figured I'd stick around for a few years to build experience. Those few years turned into 15. 15 long years of the same routine, the same desk, and the same measly annual raises that barely kept up with inflation. Each year I get a performance review where they'd praise my work ethic and attention to detail, then hand me a raise that amounted to maybe 50 cents more per hour. I kept telling myself it was fine, that stability was worth something, that things would eventually improve. During those 15 years, I watched the company grow. We took on bigger clients, expanded our services, and increased our revenue significantly. Meanwhile, I was still making essentially the same salary I'd started with, just adjusted for the bare minimum cost of living increases. I watched newer employees come in making almost as much as me from day one, while I was carrying the institutional knowledge and handling the most complex accounts. When I decided to do some research, what I found made my stomach drop. I spent weeks looking at salary surveys, job postings, and industry reports. I was making 30 to 40% less than the average for someone with my experience and skills in our area. I wasn't just underpaid, I was severely underpaid. Over the past few years, I'd also been pushing myself to learn new software systems and analytical tools on my own time. I had implemented several process improvements that saved the company both time and money. I was completing projects weeks ahead of schedule and had taken on responsibilities that were technically above my pay grade. I figured all of this had to count for something. I scheduled a meeting with my boss, let's call him Mr. Corporate since he loved to throw around business buzzwords. I came prepared with documentation of my contributions, market research on salaries, and a clear proposal for what I thought was fair compensation. The meeting started normally enough. I laid out my case professionally, highlighting my years of service, the additional skills I developed, and the value I'd brought to the company. Then I presented the salary data and made my request. I wanted my compensation to match the industry average for someone in my position. Mr. Corporate barely looked at my research. He leaned back in his chair with this smug expression I'd seen him use with difficult clients. He told me that the company didn't give raises just because someone worked harder or took on more responsibilities. He said that was just called doing your job. I was taken aback but tried to stay professional. I explained that I wasn't asking for recognition of extra effort, but for market rate compensation based on industry standards. He dismissed my concerns completely, saying that industry averages didn't matter to them. He claimed they paid what they thought the position was worth to the company, not what some survey suggested. Then he paused, clearly enjoying having the upper hand in the conversation. He told me that if I thought I was worth more, I could certainly shop it around and see if anyone else would pay me what I thought I was worth. The dismissive tone in his voice was unmistakable. He wasn't just declining my request. He was challenging me, almost daring me to try to find something better. In his mind, I was just another long-term employee who would complain but never actually leave. I asked if there was any room for discussion on the matter. He responded by saying they valued consistency and loyalty, not demands for more money. He added that if that didn't work for me, well, like he'd said, I could shop it around. I left that meeting feeling humiliated and angry. Here I was, someone who'd given this company the best years of my career, and I was being treated like I was asking for charity instead of fair compensation. That's when I decided to implement my first form of malicious compliance. If he wanted to pay me like an entry-level employee, then I'd work like one. I stopped staying late to finish projects early. I stopped volunteering for additional responsibilities. I did exactly what was in my job description and nothing more. When deadlines approached, I made sure my work was completed on time, but not a day sooner. The change was subtle but noticeable. Projects that used to be finished weeks ahead of schedule now came in right at the deadline. Process improvements I used to suggest on my own initiative suddenly stopped coming. When asked to take on additional tasks, I politely explained that I needed to focus on my core responsibilities to ensure quality work. But the real malicious compliance was yet to come. Mr. Corporate had literally told me to shop it around, so that's exactly what I did. I updated my resume, highlighting all the skills I developed and improvements I'd implemented over the years. I started networking with former colleagues who'd moved to other firms. I applied to positions that matched my experience level, not the underpaid role I'd been stuck in. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 interviews scheduled. Within a month, I had 2 solid job offers. The better of the two was offering me 66% more than my current salary, plus better benefits and actual opportunities for advancement. I walked into Mr. Corporate's office with my resignation letter, trying to contain my satisfaction. I told him I was giving my 2 weeks' notice. He looked genuinely shocked, like the possibility of me actually leaving had never occurred to him. He asked what this was about and wondered if it was because of our conversation about the raise. I explained that I had taken his advice and shopped it around, and I'd found someone willing to pay me what I was worth. His face went through several expressions: surprise, concern, and then panic when he realized what this meant. He asked me to wait and suggested that maybe we could work something out. I told him I was sorry, but I'd already accepted another offer. I added that he'd been right, though I had found someone who valued my contributions appropriately. He asked how much they were offering and suggested that maybe the company could match it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I told him they were paying me 66% more than what I made there. I also mentioned that they seemed genuinely interested in my professional development instead of just expecting me to be grateful for cost of living adjustments. The color drained from his face. He started doing the math in his head, realizing how much it was going to cost to replace me. He questioned whether the salary seemed excessive and asked if I was sure this other company was legitimate. I assured him they were very legitimate. I explained that they were actually impressed by the process improvements I'd implemented at our company, and they were excited to see what other innovations I might bring to their team. Over my final 2 weeks, the panic in the office was obvious. Mr. Corporate had to explain to the partners why they were losing someone with 15 years of institutional knowledge. They scrambled to redistribute my workload, quickly realizing how much I'd actually been handling. 3 different people were assigned to cover my responsibilities temporarily. None of them had the background knowledge to handle the complex accounts I've been managing. I spent my last days writing detailed handover notes, being as professional as possible while internally enjoying every minute of their scrambling. On my last day, Mr. Corporate made one final attempt. He told me that if this new job didn't work out, they'd be open to discussing bringing me back. I thanked him for the offer, but said I didn't think that would be necessary. 2 months after I left, I heard they'd had to hire 2 people to fully replace me, and they were paying them a combined salary that was more than what they would have paid me if they'd just given me the raise I'd asked for. After my husband passed away 2 years ago, I found myself struggling to manage everything on my own while raising my 8-year-old daughter. Between work, household chores, and making sure she got to all her activities, I was drowning. That's when my brother suggested I look into getting one of those new Tesla personal assistant robots. At first, I laughed it off. The idea seemed ridiculous and way too expensive. But after several more months of barely keeping my head above water, I decided to take the plunge. The robot cost me nearly $30,000, but it was worth every penny. The robot became like a third family member. It helped carry groceries, walked with us to the park, assisted with household tasks, and even helped my daughter with her homework. The thing was programmed to be incredibly careful around children and had multiple safety features. It never moved faster than a walking pace when we were out together, always stayed within 3 feet of us, and constantly scanned for potential hazards. On that particular Tuesday afternoon, we were walking back from the grocery store. My daughter was chattering away about her upcoming science project, while the robot dutifully carried our shopping bags. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone knew each other, and most people had gotten used to seeing us with our mechanical helper. That's when Karen showed up. I'd seen her around the neighborhood before. She was the type who complained about everything: lawn heights, Christmas decorations being up too long, kids playing too loudly. She drove this massive car that she treated like a weapon, speeding through residential streets and taking up 2 parking spaces at the grocery store. On this day, she came screeching around the corner in her vehicle, spotted us on the sidewalk, and slammed on her brakes. She rolled down her window and started yelling at us about what that thing was doing in our neighborhood. I tried to explain that it was just helping us carry groceries, but she wasn't having it. She screamed about how she'd seen the news and knew these robots were going to take over everything. She told me that was exactly what they wanted me to think. My daughter instinctively moved closer to me, clearly frightened by this woman's aggressive tone. The robot sensed her distress and positioned itself slightly between her and the street, which only seemed to make Karen more agitated. Karen pointed at the robot and yelled that it was already trying to control our movements. She accused me of endangering everyone by bringing that machine around the neighborhood. I asked her to please lower her voice because she was scaring my daughter, and tried to explain that the robot was perfectly safe and legal. She shouted back that legal didn't mean right, and that someone needed to put a stop to this before these things killed us all. She gunned her engine and sped off, leaving us standing there confused and shaken. My daughter asked me why the lady was so angry, and I tried to explain that some people are afraid of things they don't understand. The next day, we were taking our usual evening walk. The robot was carrying my daughter's backpack and a small bag of items I'd picked up from the pharmacy. We were about 2 blocks from home when I heard an engine revving behind us. I turned around to see Karen's car racing down the street toward us. At first, I assumed she was just driving aggressively like usual. Then I realized she was aiming directly for the robot. I screamed at my daughter to get back while I grabbed her and pulled her toward the nearest yard. Karen jumped the curb with her vehicle. The robot, sensing danger, tried to move away from us to draw the threat away from the child. but Karen corrected her steering and slammed into it at full speed. The impact was horrifying. The robot was thrown nearly 20 feet and landed in pieces on someone's lawn. But Karen wasn't done. She threw her car in reverse and was clearly preparing to come after us next. She yelled from her car that she had told us these things were dangerous, and now we would see what she meant. She floored the accelerator toward where my daughter and I were standing. We dove behind a parked car just when she crashed into it, missing us by inches. The sound of metal crunching and glass shattering filled the air. By this time, neighbors were running out of their houses. Someone had already called the police. Karen sat in her car, apparently realizing what she'd just done. She tried to back up and flee, but her vehicle was too damaged. When the police arrived, Karen tried to spin some story about how the robot had malfunctioned and attacked her car. She claimed she was just defending herself and the neighborhood from a rogue machine. The officer told her they had multiple witnesses who saw her deliberately drive onto the sidewalk and target the robot. He explained that she had then attempted to run over a mother and child. Karen protested that we didn't understand, that these robots were the beginning of the end, and someone had to take a stand. My daughter was crying and shaking. Several neighbors came over to comfort her while I dealt with the police. The robot lay in pieces across 2 yards, its components scattered everywhere. $30,000 of technology, destroyed by one woman's paranoid delusions. The paramedics checked us over for injuries. My daughter had scraped her knee when we dove for cover, and I had bruised my shoulder, but we were lucky to be alive. If Karen had been a better driver, she would have killed us both. Karen was arrested on multiple charges including reckless endangerment, destruction of property, and attempted vehicular assault. When they put her in handcuffs, she kept ranting about robot uprisings and how she was trying to save humanity. She screamed that we would thank her when these machines turned against us, and to mark her words because this was just the beginning. The police report documented everything. The robot's internal cameras had recorded the entire incident, providing clear evidence of Karen's deliberate actions. Multiple neighbors gave statements confirming that she had intentionally targeted us. My insurance covered some of the robot's cost, but not nearly enough. The emotional trauma my daughter experienced was immeasurable. She had nightmares for weeks about the crazy lady who tried to hurt us. We had to start therapy sessions to help her process what happened. That's when my lawyer suggested we file a civil lawsuit against Karen. We're seeking restitution for the destroyed robot, medical expenses, therapy costs, and damages for emotional distress. The lawyer seems confident we have a strong case. 3 months later, during Karen's criminal trial, her defense attorney tried to argue that she was protecting the community from dangerous technology. The prosecutor brought in expert witnesses who explained exactly how safe and regulated personal assistant robots are. Then they played the robot's camera footage in court. Everyone could see Karen deliberately swerving onto the sidewalk, targeting the robot, then trying to run us down. Her own words were recorded clearly. Her admission that she planned to destroy the robot and her threats against my family. The jury took less than 2 hours to find her guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution for the robot plus damages. Her insurance company dropped her coverage, and she lost her job when her employer saw the news coverage. During the sentencing, Karen finally seemed to realize the magnitude of what she'd done. She tried to apologize, claiming she'd just been trying to protect everyone. The judge wasn't having any of it. He told her that she had deliberately destroyed someone else's property and nearly killed a mother and child based on her own irrational fears. He explained that there are legal channels for addressing concerns about technology and that vigilante justice is not acceptable in our society. My daughter and I are doing much better now. We got a replacement robot, and she's no longer afraid of it. If anything, the experience made her more attached to our mechanical helper. She named the new one Guardian and insists it's protecting us from any other crazy people who might try to hurt us. Karen's still in prison, and our civil case is moving forward. I work at a busy restaurant downtown. The money is really good, especially on weekends and evenings when we get the dinner rush and late-night crowd. I've been there for 3 years now, and I'm one of their most reliable servers. My schedule is pretty set. I work Thursday through Sunday nights, which means my free time is mostly Monday through Wednesday during the day. My friend group formed back in college about 5 years ago. We were inseparable then, movie nights every Friday, spontaneous road trips, group study sessions that turned into pizza parties. Those were some of the best times of my life. After graduation, we all stayed local and managed to keep the tradition going with regular game nights and hangouts. But here's where things got complicated. Over the past 2 years, every single one of my friends except me has had babies. I'm talking 5 couples, all with toddlers or infants now. And suddenly everything changed. At first, I was understanding. Of course, they needed to adjust plans around nap times and feeding schedules. I got it. I even offered to help with babysitting when I could, but then they started planning what they called adults-only events. At first, I was excited. Finally, we could go back to doing some of the fun stuff we used to do. Wine tastings, nice dinners, concerts, escape rooms, all the things that don't work well with babies around. Every single one of these adults-only events happened on Friday and Saturday nights, right during my busiest work shifts. When I pointed this out, they'd always give me the same response. I would ask if we could do activities on Wednesday afternoons instead, since I was free then. Karen would tell me that weekdays didn't work because the babysitters were all in school or had their own jobs. When I suggested Sunday mornings or Mondays, she'd explain that Sunday morning was family time and Monday babysitters weren't available. This went on for months. I kept suggesting alternative times when I was free, and they kept shooting them down. The excuse was always the same: babysitter availability. I started feeling like I wasn't even part of the group anymore. My social media was full of pictures of them at fancy restaurants and wine bars, all happening while I was stuck serving tables. When I bring it up later, they'd just shrug and tell me they tried to include me, but I was working. I would remind them that I had asked if we could do it at a different time when I was free, and Karen would say it was just really hard to coordinate with all the babysitters. The breaking point came last month. My birthday fell on a Sunday, and I knew I had to work that night because Sunday nights are actually pretty decent money at the restaurant, so I asked the group chat if we could celebrate during the day. I told everyone that my birthday was next Sunday and I had to work that night, so I asked if they would all be free to do something during the day, maybe brunch or an afternoon activity. The response was positive. Everyone said yes. We made plans for a nice brunch place at 11 a.m., and I was genuinely excited. Finally, a plan that worked for everyone. Then Saturday night happened. I was at work dealing with the usual weekend dinner rush when my phone started buzzing nonstop. The group chat was exploding. Karen said that she had bad news because the babysitter had just canceled for tomorrow. The other friends asked what they were going to do. Karen explained that the babysitter said she could do 7 p.m. instead of her original time. Everyone else said that 7 p.m. worked for them, and Karen asked if they should just move the birthday celebration to 7 p.m. then. They were discussing changing my birthday plans without even asking me first. I quickly told them to wait because I couldn't do 7 p.m. since I was working Sunday night, which is why we planned it for 11 a.m. in the first place. Karen said she remembered, but they couldn't find another babysitter for daytime on such short notice. One friend suggested that maybe I could ask my manager if I could switch shifts. I explained that I already had plans made around working Sunday night and couldn't just change my schedule last minute. Karen told me to come on, saying it was just one shift, and asked if I didn't think my birthday celebration with my closest friends was more important than work. That message made my blood boil. Just one shift? This wasn't just about money, though losing a Sunday night shift would definitely hurt financially. It was about the fact that they expected me to drop everything and accommodate their problems when they'd never once done the same for me. I told them I couldn't change my shift because the restaurant was fully booked and I was needed, and asked if we could please stick to the original plan. Karen said they really couldn't make daytime work anymore and apologized. And just like that, my own birthday celebration was cancelled because it wasn't convenient for their babysitter. I was furious, but also hurt. These were supposed to be my closest friends, and they were basically telling me that their childcare arrangements were more important than my birthday or my job. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I texted my coworkers who had the day off and asked if anyone wanted to grab brunch and do something fun. 3 of them said yes right away. Sunday morning came, and I had the most amazing time. We went to this cute little brunch place, spent hours talking and laughing, then hit up an escape room afterward. I posted pictures throughout the day because I was genuinely having such a good time. For the first time in months, I felt like I was hanging out with people who actually valued my time and presence. Monday morning, my phone was blowing up again. The group chat was full of passive-aggressive messages. Karen mentioned that she saw my posts yesterday and that it looked like I had fun without them. Another friend said it would have been nice to know I was still doing something because they could have tried to make it work. A third friend said she was kind of hurt that I didn't even tell them I was making other plans. They were mad at me for making my own birthday plans after they canceled on me. I reminded them that they had canceled the celebration, so I made other plans because I wasn't going to sit home alone on my birthday. Karen insisted they didn't cancel. They just had to reschedule because of circumstances beyond their control. I pointed out that rescheduling to a time they knew I couldn't attend was basically the same as canceling on me. Karen told me I was being really dramatic about this, explaining that finding childcare was incredibly difficult and expensive and that I didn't understand because I don't have kids. Another friend agreed, saying they were all doing their best to juggle everything and the least I could do was be flexible. The worst comment came from another friend who said that my job was just serving tables and their responsibilities as parents were a little more important. That last message was the final straw. Just serving tables? Like my job wasn't a real responsibility? I told them that my job paid my rent and bills just like their jobs did for them. I explained that I'd been flexible for months, suggesting different times that worked better for me, and they'd shot down every single suggestion. I asked when it was my turn to have plans that work for my schedule. Karen claimed they'd tried to include me, but I worked such weird hours. I pointed out that weekend nights weren't weird hours for a restaurant server, and that I'd repeatedly suggested weekday daytime activities when I was free. Karen said those times didn't work for them because of the kids. I asked if their schedules mattered, but mine didn't. The conversation devolved from there, with them calling me selfish and petty, saying I should understand that having children makes their lives more complicated. They kept insisting that I was being unreasonable for not accommodating their child care needs. But here's what really got to me. Not once in this entire argument did any of them acknowledge that they had hurt me. Not once did anyone apologize for canceling my birthday plans or suggest that maybe, just maybe, they could try harder to include me. Instead, I got lectures about how hard parenting is and how I don't understand their struggles. Which, fine, I don't have kids so I don't fully get it. But I do understand having responsibilities and commitments. I do understand needing to work to pay bills. And I definitely understand what it feels like to be consistently left out by people who claim to be your friends. The whole situation came to a head this past weekend. They had planned another adults-only wine tasting on Friday night again while I was working. I didn't even bother commenting in the group chat about it. But then Karen had the audacity to text me privately. She said I've been really distant lately and that they missed me at their events. I told her I've been distant because I was never invited to events I could actually attend. Karen said that wasn't fair because they invited me to everything. I explained that they invited me to things they knew I couldn't attend because of work, then refused to consider alternative times when I was available. Karen told me they couldn't revolve their entire social calendar around my work schedule. I clarified that I wasn't asking them to revolve anything around me, just to occasionally have events at times when I could participate too. Karen pointed out that I chose to work in a restaurant and knew the hours when I took the job. I responded that she chose to have kids and knew that would affect her social life when she made that decision. She didn't respond to that message. The thing is, I'm not angry that they have kids or that their priorities have changed. I'm angry that they expect me to be the only one who always accommodates everyone else's schedule while never making any effort to accommodate mine. I've been part of this friend group for 5 years. I've celebrated their pregnancies, attended baby showers, brought gifts to meet their newborns, and offered to help whenever they needed it. But apparently, all of that counts for nothing when it comes to actually including me in the group's social activities. So last week I made a decision. I stopped engaging in the group chat unless someone directly addressed me. I stopped suggesting alternative plans that would work better for my schedule. And I started making more plans with my coworkers and other friends who actually seemed to value my time. The response was immediate. Suddenly I was getting individual texts from everyone asking what was wrong, saying they missed me, insisting that I was overreacting. But not one of them offered to actually change anything. Yesterday was the final confrontation. Karen called me directly, which she never does. She told me we needed to talk about the attitude I'd had lately. I asked what attitude she meant. Karen said I was being petty and childish about the whole birthday thing, and that we were all adults with real responsibilities. I asked what exactly she thought my job was. Karen explained that she just meant taking care of children was a bigger responsibility than serving food. I told her that bigger responsibility doesn't mean more important, and that my job paid my bills and supported me just like hers did for her. Karen argued that I could get any serving job anywhere, but they couldn't just replace their children's needs. I clarified that I didn't want to replace their children's needs. I just wanted them to occasionally consider my needs too. Karen insisted they did consider my needs. I challenged her to name one time in the past 6 months that the group planned something at a time that worked better for my schedule instead of their babysitting schedule. There was a long pause. Karen finally said it was just harder for them to coordinate. I told her that wasn't an answer. She then said that if I couldn't understand that their lives were more complicated now, then maybe I wasn't ready to be friends with people who had grown up and taken on adult responsibilities. And there it was. The implication that I hadn't grown up because I don't have kids and work in a restaurant. I told her she was right. Maybe I wasn't ready to be friends with people who think their responsibilities are more important than everyone else's. Maybe I wasn't ready to be friends with people who expect me to always be flexible while never being flexible themselves. And maybe I wasn't ready to be friends with people who think having children gives them the right to be selfish and inconsiderate to everyone else. Karen said I was being completely unreasonable. I told her that I wasn't being unreasonable, I was being treated unreasonably, and there was a difference. I hung up after that. Within an hour, the group chat was buzzing with messages about how I was being dramatic and destroying friendships over small scheduling conflicts. But here's the thing, it was never about small scheduling conflicts. It was about being consistently excluded and dismissed, about having my time and job treated as less important than theirs, and about being expected to always be the one who accommodates everyone else while never receiving the same consideration in return. So I left the group chat. I unfriended the worst offenders on social media. And I've been focusing on building friendships with people who actually want to spend time with me and respect my schedule and commitments. My coworkers threw me a belated birthday party at work last week. They decorated the break room, brought in a cake, and made sure I felt celebrated. It was simple, but it meant more to me than any fancy restaurant dinner would have, because it came from people who actually cared about including me. I work from home for about 5 years now. It's been helpful, especially after my divorce 2 years ago when I needed flexibility to rebuild my life. When I bought my house in this quiet neighborhood 3 years ago, it felt like a fresh start. The place needed work, but I was ready for a project that would keep my hands busy and my mind off everything I'd been through. The house came with a decent-sized yard front and back. I take pride in keeping it looking good. There's something therapeutic about yard work that helps clear my head after staring at a computer screen all day. Plus, maintaining the property value was important since it represented most of my savings after the divorce settlement. For all 3 years I've lived here, my routine has been the same. When the weather gets hot, which it does regularly in our area, I mow the lawn in shorts and no shirt. It's practical and comfortable. I've seen plenty of other guys in the neighborhood doing the same thing. Never thought twice about it until recently. The problem started earlier this year when a new couple moved in directly across the street. They looked to be in their late 30s, maybe early 40s. The husband seemed to work a regular job since I'd see him leave every morning around 8 and come back around 6. The wife worked from home like me, which I learned quickly since we'd often end up outside at the same times. She was friendly enough, always ready for small talk when we'd run into each other. Sometimes she'd be doing yard work or taking walks around the neighborhood. We'd chat about normal neighbor stuff like the weather, local events, and complaints about the city's slow response to fixing potholes. Nothing unusual or inappropriate, just being neighborly. Since I work from home, my schedule is flexible. I can mow my lawn whenever I want, which is convenient. Some days I'll do it in the morning if I have afternoon client calls. Other days I'll knock it out in the evening if I've been stuck inside working all day. Last week was one of those afternoon sessions. It was probably around 4 or 5 in the evening, and it had been brutally hot all day. I'd finished up a logo design project and decided to get the mowing done before it got too late. Same as always, threw on my old shorts and headed outside shirtless. The sun was still intense, but there was a decent breeze that made it bearable. I was just finishing up the front yard when I noticed the wife across the street watering her flower beds. After I shut off the mower, she walked over to chat. She complimented me on getting the yard done before the heat got worse and mentioned how good her flowers were looking this year. I thanked her and said she must be using some good fertilizer. She explained that she'd been trying a new brand that seemed to be working well. We talked for maybe 10 minutes about gardening and the neighborhood association's new rules about fence heights, normal stuff. Then her husband pulled into their driveway. He got out of his car and walked over to join us. I've probably talked to him a handful of times since they moved in, but he always seemed a bit standoffish. Not unfriendly exactly, just not warm either. He greeted us and asked how things were going. I told him I'd just finished the yard and asked about his day at work. He said it had been long, but he couldn't complain. We made small talk about the heat and what everyone's weekend plans were. Nothing memorable or weird about the conversation. Eventually, we all said our goodbyes and went inside our respective houses. Later that night, around 10:30, I got a message on social media. It was from the husband, which surprised me since I didn't even know we were connected online. I had no idea how he'd found my profile or gotten my information. The message was long and bizarre. He went on this rant about how I was a home worker and needed to cover up when mowing my own yard. He said it was inappropriate and disrespectful to the neighborhood. He claimed his wife shouldn't have to see me shirtless when she was trying to enjoy her own yard. I read the message twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding something. This guy was seriously upset about me mowing my own lawn without a shirt on my own property. Something I've been doing for 3 years without a single complaint from anyone. I wasn't about to let this slide. I wrote back and told him to kick rocks and stop being such an insecure little prick. If he had a problem with what I was doing on my own property, that was his issue to deal with, not mine. The whole thing was so ridiculous it almost made me laugh. Almost. But the more I thought about it, the more irritated I became. Who was this guy to tell me what I could and couldn't wear on my own property? The audacity was unbelievable. A few days later, it was time to mow again. The grass doesn't stop growing just because my neighbor has control issues. But this time, I decided to have a little fun with the situation. If he wanted to complain about my regular mowing attire, I'd give him something to really complain about. I dug through my dresser and found the shortest, most revealing shorts I owned. They were probably a size too small and showed more leg than I'd normally be comfortable with, but they'd do perfectly for this occasion. Paired with no shirt as usual, it was definitely a more provocative look than my typical mowing outfit. I made sure to take my time with the front yard, doing extra passes and being thorough with the edging. The wife was outside again, and I could see her husband peeking through their front window multiple times. He looked angry and shocked. When I finished, I made a show of stretching and wiping the sweat off my chest before heading inside. The next day, I got another message from him, this one even more unhinged than the first. He was threatening to call the homeowners association and file complaints about indecent exposure. I took screenshots of his messages and forwarded them to a lawyer friend who couldn't stop laughing when he read them. My lawyer friend explained that there was absolutely nothing the neighbor could do legally. I was on my own property. I wasn't exposing anything that would be considered indecent, and there were no local ordinances about shirtless yard work. When the husband tried to complain to the homeowners association, it went nowhere since several board members pointed out that half the men in the neighborhood mowed shirtless during summer. 2 weeks later, when I was outside doing some weeding, the wife came over and apologized for her husband's behavior. She told me he'd been acting strange and controlling about a lot of things lately, and she was getting fed up with it. She mentioned that she was considering her options regarding their marriage and seemed frustrated with his recent attitude. Last I heard, he moved out. She still waves when she sees me mowing, and I've gone back to my normal shorts. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.